Hey folks, James Abrenio coming to you from Abrenio Law, your Northern Virginia personal injury and criminal defense law firm. Let's talk about expert designations in the context of Virginia personal injury cases. What is an expert designation? Why does it matter? Why do you need to think about it? Um, and under Virginia law, Virginia requires what we call civil discovery. Civil discovery means that every party involved in a case has a right to discover the opponent's case against them so they can properly defend and investigate a case. So when it comes to expert designations, an expert designation is essentially the report that your attorney is required to file with the court and provide to the defense attorney, essentially designating what your expert's expert opinions are going to be. So let's say you're involved in a car accident case and you've suffered multiple injuries. Let's say one includes a shoulder rotator cuff tear to your left shoulder. In order for your expert to testify at trial, your attorney, typically 90 days before trial, depending on, it's going to depend on the jurisdiction and the local discovery rules, but typically speaking, it's going to be 90 days before trial. Your attorney has to file a report with the defense attorney notifying them of what your doctor is going to say or what they expect them to say at trial. So if for that shoulder injury case, that rotator cuff tear case, your attorney is going to have to get an expert designation signed off by your expert that that expert witness believes to a reasonable degree of medical probability, and that's a standard of Virginia. It's based upon their expertise, their education, their training, and their knowledge of the case, that they believe that that injury you sustained, that rotator cuff tear, was due to the car accident you were involved in, and it was not due to something else. And the treatment that you got was related to the case, necessary and necessitated by the accident, and reasonable and fair and prudent based upon that expert witness's experience and understanding of the case. Now, that may seem pretty simple, but on the back end, and frankly, if it's done right, you, the client, won't know a whole lot about the expert designation. But in order for an attorney to properly file an expert designation, not only do they have to have the report done, but they have to work with the doctor in order to get that expert designation done. So that typically involves providing the expert witness with all the records of the case, accident report, photographs of the property damage, EMS report, the medical reports related to that treatment, sometimes pleadings and depositions to talk about the mechanics of the accident and the pain you had. But it also requires the doctor to review their own records and treatment records, as well as other treatment records of the case, to properly form their opinion to a reasonable degree of medical probability. And under Virginia law, that information is really what they call the data typically relied upon by an expert in that field. So again, these are medical records, there's photographs, these are also physical examinations of you, the patient, if they're the treating doctor, complaints made by you, pain made by you, your history about what happened. For instance, in a rotator cuff tear case, look, I never had pain in my right shoulder. Then I was driving, got rear-ended, and I remember my shoulder snapped, and then I had pain ever since then. And I couldn't move my arm since the accident. Those kinds of things that logistically make sense in order to link up that injury to the accident, and then for the doctor then to extrapolate that, the treatment that they provided that makes it reasonable under the circumstances. So let's say you had a rotator cuff tear, that doctor recommended physical therapy, conservative treatment. That didn't work. You ended up having to get surgery. You want to make sure under your expert designation that doctor can opine to a reasonable degree of medical probability that that's all good and related to the case. Now, what does that require mechanically? At least typically what I will do is I make sure that the doctor has all of the information, has all the documents. They've obviously treated you, and they remember and they're well aware of the treatment history of you. And also they have a proper draft of the expert designation, and make sure if they don't draft it themselves, a lot of times they will draft it themselves, but sometimes I, the attorney, will draft the expert designation. But I want to make sure that the doctor's reviewed it and has signed off on it. And the expert designation is going to talk about the doctor's medical training, to how they develop their opinions, their understanding of the history of your case and the documents they reviewed, as well as their examination of you and treatment of you, and explain that they believe to a reasonable degree of medical probability their opinions in the case, and that I, the attorney, this is what I expect them to testify to. Now, in addition to getting the doctor the medical records as well as the draft of the expert designation, it also requires oftentimes them to be paid. So, in order to get expert designation done properly, you typically have to pay the doctor whatever fee they're going to do. A lot of times, I'm meeting with my doctors prior to expert designations, or at least having a phone conference with them to make sure that we're on the same page, and hopefully that expert designation gets filed properly and timely. And that way, any argument by the defense that it's not proper gets you past what you need to get. Now, what happens if either you don't file the expert designation, or your attorney doesn't file the expert designation, or the expert designation isn't sufficient by Virginia law to be able to allow that expert to testify? What the defense is going to do is file a motion to exclude your expert witness testimony and strike your designation. And if that is successful, your expert no longer can testify, and a big meat part of your case is gone. So expert designations are super important in the case. It's something that we all, as plaintiffs' attorneys, have in mind. Once we file a case, we're thinking about the expert designation from day one. We're trying to do our best to coordinate with the doctors to make sure they get done properly. Look, sometimes your doctors won't cooperate. Sometimes they'll say they're telling you that, hey, I'm going to help out, but then when it comes to the attorney, they ignore them. And so then we have to try to get independent doctors to review your case and then do their own expert designation. So every case is going to be different. I think a long story short for you, the client, just be aware what an expert designation is, but also when you're getting into litigation, you can have discussions with your doctor about, hey, are you willing to help me out in my auto case? Now, I don't want you just saying, hey, the only reason I'm treating with you is because I want to file a lawsuit. But, once you've developed rapport with your treating doctor, I think it's fine to have discussions with, hey, my attorney may reach out to you at some point to help you put together a designation and to help you testify. Are you willing to help out and getting them on board? I find having clients reaching out to the doctors, letting them know this is going to happen, and building that rapport makes them more committed to helping out the attorney. Surprisingly, a lot of doctors don't like attorneys. So I try to do my best to not waste their time, but having a client that's got a great relationship with the doctor always makes that a little bit easier. So hopefully this gave at least a general understanding of expert designations. Obviously, this is not a video that a lawyer is going to use to then create their own designation and know that they're going to get passed a motion to exclude. But this is really for you, the client, you, the prospective client, you, the injured party, to kind of understand the basics of what expert designations are. If you have more questions about Virginia personal injury law, feel free to check out our website, www.abreniolaw.com. You can also give us a call at phone number 703-570-4180. Wish you the best. Until we chat again, be safe. Thanks. Bye.